Welcome to the Spirit of a Badass, where we celebrate stories of courage, hope, and resiliency. I'm your host, Alecia Jacobson. Hello, and welcome to every badass listening with us today. I am so glad you are here. My guest here today, so she has big meaning to me. I'm not sure if she fully knows the big meaning that she actually has to me. Chariti was my very first coach that I ever hired back in 2016. I'd never even really known what a life coach was. And I actually found her because Jamie, who is the producer of this podcast, I sent her a text and I was like, hey, I need a coach, mostly for business stuff, but also for life stuff. And she said, I don't know Chariti, but I've heard of her and here's her contact. So I landed with Chariti. And then Chariti also helped me develop my first talk that I gave in 2016, which was pretty pivotal because it was the first time I'd put out there, I want to be a public speaker. And then somebody got wind of that and was like, hey, are you really? And I was like, oh shit, I guess yes. And so then I was like, Chariti, I have to do this now. Again, the details of like, yeah, I want to do it. But so Chariti helped me develop that talk and really helped me sort of get my mind right with that talk. And then in 2019, I joined the UW-Madison Professional Coaching Program where Chariti was my instructor. So she has really been a pivotal person in my, I truly don't think that I would be where I am today had it not been for her and her skills. She also was, I don't know if she kind of pointed this out to me or drew it out of me, but in our coaching, she helped me through this idea that I was kind of proving myself. And when I opened up my gym, a lot of what I was doing was like proving, one, that I could even do it. And she walked through that space with me. And it's a space that I have found myself in again right now that I'm pretty sure I've been doing for a really long time. And I'm kind of in this space of a proving my worth hangover. Like, I feel like I finally gotten to the roots of it. And I was really unaware of all of the proving I was doing. And I'm sort of in this space now of like, oh, like, that was a lot of effort and a lot of work I put in. And now I'm kind of in this space of, I don't need to push so hard anymore. I can just be. And really being in that space with Chariti and her offering me the space to process and really start that process, that was so instrumental in kind of where I am now, is like at the root of it. So if you too are going something like this was in 2016, we're in 2023 now, and I'm still like kind of peeling this back. So don't judge yourself, like just ride the wave and kind of go with the flow on it, be in the journey of it, because rushing it isn't going to do anything. So just have some grace and be patient with yourself. Growth is a process. So as you can tell, today, of course, has a really special meaning to me. And I'm so pleased to introduce my guest to you. Chariti Gent is a master certified coach per the International Coaching Federation, the director of professional coaching education at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a mixed media artist, and a Bell's Palsy long hauler. She is currently focused on ways to let go of restlessness in her life and make room for more peace each and every day. Chariti is going to share her journey with Bell's palsy and how making art has showed up for her in a way that she maybe wasn't expecting. Chariti, thank you for your willingness to show up and be vulnerable with us here today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Alecia. It's great to be here. I'm just honored. I feel so honored that you asked me to join you on one of your episodes. So thanks so much.
And I want to show you something, because art is a lot of the reason why I invited you here, because that has become something big for you. And in our coaching back in 2016, I still have from July 6th, 2016,
Wow.
You made this for me. And if this is a podcast, so you can't see it, but it is a big ass piece of paper, like large, like you get in like art class in like elementary school, that Chariti took the words that I was saying and me, like my goals, and she drew them in our session. And this large piece of, it's like 5 feet long. It has been like under my bed, in my closet. Like it's very wrinkly, but it's so important to me. So I had it hanging on my wall at one point. And I think on here someplace that it says kicks ass. And yes, like it has been like one of my goals is just like kicking ass and really just like showing other people that you too can kick ass. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. It has stuck with me all of these years.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you kept it and that it's been a good touchstone. I mean, that's when we do those, that's kind of what I don't do them anymore with my clients, but when I used to do them, that was exactly the goal, was that it was something that it was a visual that you could then, that was all about you, and then you could hang on to it and hopefully for years to come have it inspire you. So I'm a big fan of art inspiring life. So great. That's great. Yay.
Yes. I know. As I was getting ready for this, I'm like, I still have that. I have to show her. So how are you today? Like, really, like, how are you?
Oh, I am, in general, I'm good. I have been, lately, as you said in the intro, in the bio, I've been really trying to focus on protecting my peace lately. And so comes in a variety of different forms for me. And I was many, many years ago diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. So it's been very important to me over the years to find ways to continue to protect that peace. And I don't know why, but lately, the last few months, that's been the sound and the calling in the back of my head and in creaks and corners of my mind is like, protect your peace. And so, today feels really good in terms of protecting my peace. I got up, I'm like, oh, I get to go hang out with Alecia this morning on the podcast. I get to see some old colleagues later this afternoon. I'm meeting a friend for dinner. So that to me is all very good stuff and helps me to stay more centered and grounded.
Okay. So centered and grounded. So when you're protecting your peace, is that what, like, that's the state you're in, but what are you protecting?
That's a great question. You've been well trained. Did you say, what am I protecting?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, it's a sense of not getting too overwhelmed, because I have a tendency to be a yes person, to be like, oh, you want to do that? Yeah, that sounds cool. Let's do that. Or, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. I actually have this little note I keep. You can't see it if you're listening, but I'll show it to you here. I tape it onto my screen. I tore it, but it says, how many great ideas can I say no to today? And that is because I am, you're like, oh, you're feeling that. I can see the look on your face. That's my problem, is I say yes to too many things and it overwhelms me, and then it shuts me down because I get into a complete tizzy, or I spin up so much that my energy is just too much. And I have a hard time bringing it back down. And so I think part of what led to the Bell's palsy episode, which I'm still on this right side of my face, I don't know if you can really see it, but my eye is small and my face is a little jacked up on this one side, but I'm still dealing with that through physical therapy and different medical treatments. But I think what spurred it was a lot of my life had gotten to be too much. It was too much in all kinds of ways. And my body was like, you know what? You're not listening. We've been telling you, slow it down, wind it down, chill it out, stop saying yes. You're not listening. So you know what? Bam, we're going to nail you down to this bed for the next 6 months or so, or 3 months it was really. But yeah. So to me, protecting my peace is about protecting my health, because I really believe health is wealth, and peace is health. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's really important, because people often ignore those little whispers of, hey, slow down. Hey. And they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And in some way, your body manifests something and it shuts you down. And it makes you stop,
totally stop, dead stop. There's a great, I wish I could remember the quote. You've probably heard it. Something like, if you don't pay attention to your body's needs today, you'll be forced to go to the hospital later, or something
like that. Yes.
Yeah. The gist of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I was checking out your website, and you called your experience, which I think is like the words. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. The anatomy of a crash.
So that was inspired by an Alanis Morissette song from the early 90s.
You're just hitting me in all the places today.
I was listening. So when I got the Bell's palsy in October of 21, I did not work for 3 months because I literally couldn't. The right side of my face was frozen. It just completely melted one day. And so I had to relearn how to eat and drink and kiss my spouse and take a shower because I couldn't close my eye. I'd sleep at night. I couldn't close my eye. So I had to tape it with all this tape and goop. And anyway, And I speak for a living. So I was like, I can't go to work right now because speaking hurts my face. And it still does to this day. Like if I laugh and smile too much, this muscle will just cramp right up. And I have to kind of sit here and massage it out in front of people, but whatever, it's fine now. I just do it and I don't care.
Well, part of you is laughing a lot. I mean, that's
Right?
when I think of you, I think of a very joyous.
Yeah. And I always have. And so it's really been tough because when I have those big belly laughs with the wide smile, this muscle back deep in here cramps. And even though we've been using some targeted muscle relaxants in this area, we're not quite there yet. We haven't dialed in exactly the formula needed. We're getting there. So I started after I got the Bell's palsy and I was like, I can't do anything. I can't just sit here all day and stare at the walls. I can only watch so much Netflix. I decided to, make a playlist one day. And I was listening to different songs and that came up and I was like, OMG, like this is totally how I feel. I've crashed. And anyway, fast forward, I started doing a bunch of art and had an opening in May of 22. Madison's Metropolitan Museum of Art does a gallery night a couple times a year where local businesses will feature an artist and people can go from space to space. It's fun. It's just a little community builder and artists can get themselves out there a little bit. So I did one and I thought, the person hosting me was like, what are you going to call your exhibit? And I was like, well, I don't know. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? This whole thing, everything I'm going to display was created from the time I was diagnosed with the bells to today. So a period of 7 months. So it's really, if you could watch the progression of the art, I didn't share it all with everyone, but I can see the progression of the art from the day I was diagnosed or shortly thereafter until that date that I showed at the exhibit or that I did the gallery night. You can see literally the anatomy of the crash, like how it went from like right before I had the bells, I was making art that was really so busy. I mean, now that I look back on it, I see it. I didn't notice it at the time or I wasn't conscious of it, but my art was extremely busy. And like there was no negative space. I filled every space with a bright color or a symbol or a mark or something. And then I got the bells and I picked up the paintbrushes I think I was maybe a week into the bells. And I picked up the paintbrushes and I just drew nothing but blank watercolor in very light tones. Like it was just page after page after page of just blank watercolor, just the flow of water over the paper with color and pigment. And so I didn't realize at the time I just didn't even think about it. It's just what I did. And when I look back on it now, I was like, wow, like my mind was mirroring or I was showing to myself and on paper what was happening in my brain to a large degree, and I wasn't even cognizant of it. True, like, the meta was not happening at the time. I was just healing and trying to get through it, and then slowly I would add more elements back in and more elements back in. But one thing I have noticed in my art that I have not returned to is that complete busyness. And when I do find myself getting a piece together or creating a piece that starts to feel very busy, I notice it, where I'm like, ooh, there's not enough blank space on this canvas anymore. And I go with it because that's what I think art is. It's a journey of accepting what's on the paper and finding a way to make it beautiful. But it's just been a really interesting journey to watch how that art has mirrored my own healing journey in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and the protecting of your piece, leaving that white space.
Exactly.
Wow. So you were doing art before. I said I showed this, like you are an artist. And you started then, again, you said about a week after.
Yep.
Can you take us to when you first got diagnosed and sort of what happened?
Sure. Okay. So it was a Monday and I was starting to have this really bad occipital migraine almost, like in the back of my neck and the base of my skull, a headache. And so I kind of just drank a bunch of water that day and thought I must have done something to my neck. That night I went to bed and I couldn't really sleep because it was so painful and uncomfortable. So I got up, I took some ibuprofen. That didn't touch it. All day Tuesday I worked, but it was like, God, this really hurts. And I just couldn't get it to loosen. And then, same thing, Tuesday night I couldn't sleep very well. Then Wednesday morning I had to meet some colleagues for coffee at 8:00 in the morning. And I met them. And I said to them, my face feels weird. Does it look weird? And they're like, no, not really. I was like, I've got this horrible headache and I just can't get rid of it. And they're like, maybe you should see if you can get into your chiropractor. Maybe you've got maybe you slept funny on it. You got a little joint out of whack. And I was like, that's a good idea. So I have the chiropractor I've used for 10 years now. Shout out to Dr. Kaylee at Arc of Life Chiropractic. And 3:00, she's like, I'll slide you in, come in at 3. She took one look at me and was like, oh, I'm not touching you. She's like, you are going straight to the ER or to the urgent care. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, it's either you're having a stroke or you have something called Bell's palsy. I don't know which it is, but you need to go to the ER because they can diagnose it, but you're going to need treatment from someone beyond what I can offer. And she's like, and I'm not going to touch your body right now because your nerves are extremely inflamed. And I was like, okay. So I go over to the urgent care, same sort of routine. They look at me and they're like, oh, you're going to the ER.
So what were they seeing? Because your colleagues didn't see it. So what were they seeing?
So over the course of that day, and I had noticed it a little bit too, over the course of the day, it's the pandemic, so we're on Zoom calls all day. I'm noticing that the right side of my face is starting to fall. And by that, I mean, like, when I would smile on camera, I would catch that, like, my right eye wasn't lifting up anymore. Like, you kind of have this little lift when you smile naturally. My eye wasn't lifting. The corner of my mouth was no longer lifting. The dimple on my cheek wasn't there anymore. Just very little things that were just not quite right. And then when I got to the hospital that night after they did an MRI to rule out a stroke, they were like, you have something called Bell's palsy. And my face continued to fall for the next 24 hours to the point where it got to be like, it was such a weird sensation because you can feel everything. It's not like you're paralyzed and you can't feel anything. You can feel everything, but you can't control it. It won't move. Your brain, the circuitry between your brain and the muscle is completely cut off. So what happened is the cranial nerve that comes from the base of your neck that goes up into your skull that then controls all the movement in your face through this network of nerves had essentially been choked off. And they don't know really what causes it. The leading science on it is that it's a virus that's latent in the body that flares up, likely because of stress. And normally when we get a flare like that, our body will boom, come in and tamp it down, and you don't even know you've had a flare. But in some cases where it's bad enough, I guess, your body can't overcome, the immune response is not strong enough, and you get, basically the nerve gets choked off because it becomes so inflamed, it no longer fits through that hole at the base of your skull. So you're literally like choking it. There's no oxygen coming to any part of that nerve inside the skull and into the face. And the longer that it's choked off, the more damage happens. So mine was a severe, significant damage. I had over 75% right about 75% of the side of my face was paralyzed. And they said to me, they handed me some tape in the ER. They're like, here you go. Here's some Trans4 3M tape. Tape your eyes shut at night. Call your primary on Monday. Good luck. This will probably spontaneously heal in 2 to 3 weeks. Most people have complete 100% of 2 to 3 weeks done with it. I, of course, start doing everything you shouldn't do, which is get online and read about Bell's palsy. And I joined a Facebook group about Bell's palsy to learn more. And in the meantime, had called the UW because they have something called a facial nerve clinic. We're one of the very few in the world. And we are so fortunate to be here in the Madison, Wisconsin area where we've got such amazing medical teams. So I called the facial nerve clinic and they said, ooh, yeah, this was like maybe day 3. I said, I haven't gotten any, like nothing's happening with my face. I don't know what to do. And I thought there was some other reason. I'm trying to remember why it was that I called them. But long story short, they were like, come in. We want to see you. You've had significant paralysis. We want to see you now, not later. And they actually looked at me and they're like, well, we have 2 options. We can put you on some pretty heavy steroids and an antiviral, which I was on actually already, the steroids, or we can do a craniotomy. And my husband and I'm like, what did you just say? Like, did I just craniotomy? And he's like, yeah, you've got pretty significant swelling of that nerve, and we got to get the pressure off of it, or you're going to lose your functioning in your face for permanent. So he's like, take the weekend and think about it. This was the doctor at the time. He's like, take the weekend and think about it. I do not want anyone putting a hole in my skull. I don't need to be cracked open. I will have pirate face the rest of my life if that's what it means, but I am not going to have my skull cracked open. So the steroids luckily got the inflammation down. But when I was there at the facial nerve clinic, they said, you know what, we're going to test you for Lyme, because one of the known causes of Bell's palsy, or facial paralysis anyway, is Lyme disease. And we live in a tick-infested world here in Wisconsin. And my first Lyme test came back positive. So they actually put me on a cyclovir, which is an antiviral. a pretty strong antiviral just in case. But then the second Lyme test, because they do, it's a two-stepper, the second test came back negative. So some doctors will tell you, you don't have it. The first test is not sensitive enough. We really only look at the second test. Other doctors will say, we don't really know. The tests really, the medicine on Lyme is not that advanced. So who knows? It could be Lyme disease. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. We got me on the antivirals. We got me on the steroids and heavy doses for like a week. No, actually it was 2 weeks. So I was thinking when I went into the ER that first day originally that I might return to work. Like I texted my boss that night and was like, I'm in the ER tonight. I'm not coming in tomorrow. I'll talk to you maybe Friday. I'll be in Friday. Friday lasted 6 months. But so I went home after that ER visit and got the drugs in me. And the first week was really just out of it and a lot of pain still, trying to wrap my head and my heart around what the hell just happened here. And then started to kind of slowly, although I didn't know it at the time, I was starting to descend into a really deep situational depression. And I think every day that I saw no healing, no progress, especially when I'm on these boards where people are like, look at me, functioning is back. And I'm on day 14 and I still can't drink water without having to tilt my head side. I'm still trying to figure things out. And it wasn't until week 9 that I actually started to get some noticeable functioning back in my face. But in the meantime, I was like, I got to do something. I can't just sit here by myself all day and do nothing or watch TV all the time. And that's when I picked up those paintbrushes. And I literally remember my husband brought me a little table that he put next to my bed, a water, a bell jar full of water, a few paintbrushes, some paper, and a pan of watercolors. And that was a lot of my days, was journaling and painting and just sleeping. And that was the beginning of the healing, at least in that acute part of it.
Yeah. And that was what I was wondering about, because like I said earlier, you are a really happy, optimistic, joyful person. And to have that pain and to be put in this situation, how did that healing impact that sort of joy? Like, how did that start to emerge again?
It took a while. It took a long while. I mean, it was hard. Like I was probably in that state of depression for at least, I think I remember it was like in February. One of my best friends was visiting me for a weekend. And she's like, are you at a place yet where you were able to have perspective, where you can kind of stand back and look in at yourself and see where you're at? And I'm like, no, not yet. So I knew I was still in the throes of some depression at that point, but I had started to feel the turn a little bit. I think by the time I went back part-time to work, that was late January, early February, starting to feel that turn a little bit. And then slowly into the spring months, it was better. I don't know that I actually noticed a particular moment in time, but I think just slowly, honestly, watching my healing. Oh, this was a great thing. Watching my healing and acknowledging my healing was huge to the healing. And there was a particular author, I love his work. Jaya John is his name. I don't know how I found him, but he wrote this book. I don't think I have it in here. It's called Fragrance After the Rain. And it's just this, and this is another one he's got here, Daughter, Drink This Water. But some of it's poetry, some of it's just kind of freeform writing. But he had this one quote that I just opened up and came to one night that said, part of healing is acknowledging your healing. And so I wrote that down in my journal, and I thought about that, and I was like, I need to be acknowledging my healing to myself. And so all along, I was taking pictures of my face, like every day, every other day, to see if I could see a difference. So I would go back and look and see, can I trace some healing happening? And I would try to acknowledge that to myself. Or what people were constantly checking in on me. Oh my God, the generosity of people when I was sick was like mind blowing. But I would tell them what was happening with my healing, and sometimes probably more detail than they wanted, but it helped me to heal, to tell them like, well, today I actually drank water and only one little dribble came out the side of my like little things like that. And that I learned was a big part of your healing, is to acknowledge your progress, even though it seems so small.
What a great concept, especially, I mean, that can be across everything. Acknowledging the healing, acknowledging the progress, acknowledging what has happened, because a lot of times the focus is on what hasn't happened or what they don't have, but really taking that and really giving focused time. And like you said, journaling to what you could and can do.
Yeah. I was also super inspired during that healing time to bring that joy back. I was super inspired by, my one savior every night was a bath. I took a 2-hour bath every single night, like where I did the whole thing with like the candles and the books and the low lighting and the bubble, all of it every night religiously, because it was what allowed, I kept thinking I have to find ways to keep my nervous system, to keep the inflammation down, whatever I can do to just keep that calm, that peace, protect that peace. And so in the bathtub, I would read. And so I started picking up a lot on books I'd never before considered. I started reading books about God and reading books about poetry, all kinds of poetry. Reading this Jaya John person that I found, his work was just spoke to me. Forgiveness and healing work about being a hypersensitive person. I mean, it was like I was on hyper self-development mode for like 90 days. In fact, my therapist was like, okay, you can relax. Like, you have got this. You do not. She was like, wow, you are super into this right now. And I was, because I think when there was there was a book I read by a playwright. Her name was Sarah Ruhl. I think it's Ruhl. Anyway, she has Bell's palsy, and she's, I think, in her late 30s, and she's a famous Broadway playwright. And so she wrote this book, and I think it's called Smile is the title. And she's a long hauler like me, still doesn't have functioning fully back in her face. But one of the best things I got from her book, and I should have brought to show you, I made a little piece of art for it, but her quote is, when you can no longer communicate with your smile, you are forced to find your voice. And so that really just hit me. And so a lot of the journaling and the reading, I was trying to find my voice. I was trying to find my voice around, how do I protect my peace? How do I come back from this changed in a way that is going to be good for me? Not for other people, for me. And what does that mean for me in terms of my relationships with others and myself? And what I came to was that the people pleaser in me, I had to confront her in a hardcore way and be like, you can't say yes to everybody and everything all the time. And if they don't like it, F them, like, it's just, that's the way it has to be. Otherwise my peace gets broken and I get sick. And so I'm like, okay, I'm hearing you, universe. I'm trying to do this. So that for me, I've noticed now that what are we in? I'm 18 months out from the Bell's palsy diagnosis. I'm still struggling with getting everything back in order. And I'm noticing taking on more than I should. So that's why I'm like, okay, I got to pull this back. Like, no more, no more. Like, we've reached the max. Protect the peace, Charity, protect the peace.
You mentioned saying no and being a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people pleasers
mm-hmm.
out there. How did you come to that? How did you realize that it was the people pleaser in you?
That's a great question. I had been doing some work anyway in therapy before the Bells around sort of people pleasing and that kind of a thing. So the Bells just kind of heightened some of that awareness. Can't even explain it, honestly, but I was probably trying to think. Oh, I somehow came across, I don't even know how I came across it, but there's a woman, Elaine Ahrens, who wrote this book, The Highly Sensitive Person. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, this sounds a lot like me. And one of the classic hallmarks of a highly sensitive person is that they can be anyway, a huge people pleaser. And so I started going down this road of, what does that really mean to be a people pleaser? And I started reading a lot about trauma from childhood and about where that people pleaser comes from. And I realized how much of my little girl was still present in my way I function as an adult. That, as a young child growing up in a household of divorce where my parents did not have a good relationship. I was the oldest. And so I always thought, well, if I can just keep the peace, everything will be okay. And so you learn as a protective mechanism as a child to just do whatever you have to do to keep the peace and keep everything just rolling smoothly. Like, we just don't want any big bumps, because the big bumps is when the conflagration comes. And that is, as a kid, really hard to suffer through. So that's how I kind of spent my whole life, was really kind of operating from that place. And even though I intellectually have known that for a while, something about the Bells episode really gave me maybe the space or the inclination or just more of a boost to say, that's still here and it's still causing you trouble. And we got to figure this out so that the next 50 years of your life I'm sure it'll be with me always in some fashion or form, but learning to put boundaries around it for myself to protect my peace is huge.
Yeah. So you went from keeping the peace to protecting your
My
peace.
peace, keeping everybody
Mm-hmm.
else's peace at the expense of my own.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's often what people do. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
this book that I have. I think it's Stop People Pleasing.
Mhm.
And it's been really helpful for me to
It's
read that.
hard. Yeah. Not
Yes.
people pleasing. I'm writing that. I'm writing that
Mm-hmm. I have it.
down.
I don't see it right now. It's someplace on my desk here.
Okay. It's really hard because especially as a people pleaser, when you stop people pleasing, people don't like it. They don't like this version of you a lot of times.
No, you're rocking the boat.
Yeah. And they're like, not only are you just rocking the boat, but this is so not how you are. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've literally heard close people in my life say to me, I don't understand. What happened to that sweet person you used to be? And you're like, wow. Like, I mean, I don't fault them and judge them. I mean, we're all human and they're used to me being a certain way. But I'm telling for anyone out there who's thinking about as a people pleaser, how to shift it for yourself, know that that's going to happen. People are going to show up and they're not going to be ready for it. They're not going to like it. And that's okay. That's okay.
Any advice or anyone who is doing that and maybe comes to that spot where the people are like, whoa, are you okay? Like, I'm not used to this version of you. And then because that makes them uncomfortable. And that's really
Yes.
hard as a people pleaser to then sit in that space. Anything
Yeah.
that you would share with them?
I'm thinking just about how the most recent episode I went through with this, not episode, but where someone said to me, are you okay? I thought to myself, oh, I need to explain or I need to change. But then I was like, no, I don't. And I just said, yeah, I'm actually okay. I'm, it's been a few months of whatever. I needed some time to kind of hang back, and I didn't go and do and please all the people the way they expected. I think just remind people that, especially if you know someone is a people pleaser, that if they do kind of drop back or drop out or don't always ask, I think a check-in, are you okay, is fine, but don't push it beyond that. Like, I don't know. I think the reason I'm struggling is because I think it's probably different for everybody.
Okay.
When I'm feeling like I need to protect my peace, I will go into my little shell. Like, I tend to be very withdrawn. That's how I kind of work. And so I have really close friends that know when I withdraw, they check in with just checking in. I've noticed you've been really quiet lately. My close friends know that about me. But other than that, I don't want people badgering me, and I wouldn't think anybody else would either want that for themselves.
Yeah, don't badger people in general. Leave them alone.
Yeah.
Just a blanket rule.
But yeah, exactly.
Don't badger anyone. So tell us more about your art and explain the process.
Oh gosh. Okay. Art is so fun. So first of all, you should all out there who are listening know that I was never did art as a child. In fact, my mom always used to say that my sister was her creative one and I was her public speaker, and which was fine with me at the time because I remember I was thinking about this the other day. I was watching this kid, Carlos, who was in second grade with me, draw a superhero. And I thought, oh my God, I can never draw like that. I'm not even going to try. So we kind of get trained, I think, by society and in our own brains that if we can't do art a certain way, we aren't artistic or creative. So fast forward all that, I didn't do any creative stuff like that, hardly any. I shouldn't say hardly any, but it wasn't a big part of my life until I hit 40. So I'm going to be 50 this summer. So about 10 years ago, I went on my very first retreat, and the retreat was amazing. And there were 7 women, and we learned how to paint with acrylics. Very simple acrylics on canvas, nothing big. But I came away from that feeling like, wow, that was fun. And I don't need to judge it, and it doesn't need to be for anybody but me. And so I started continuing with the acrylics, and then I decided I would take a class, and then I continued with that, and then another class until it just evolved. And now I realize for me, art is my quote unquote therapy, in the sense of, as someone who lives with generalized anxiety, like I can't sit and watch a movie with my family without having to get up and go check, like, oh, did the dog need to go out? Oh, did we turn the lights on the front porch? Oh, I got to remember to start the dishwasher. Like my husband's always like, would you just sit down and watch the movie? I'm like, I can hear it. So I've learned that if I can sit and just kind of paint and do my, kind of doodle on the surface of my paints to create my picture, I I find that really relaxing and calming and grounding, protecting my peace. And so for me, that's why I do the art now more than anything. It gives me something to do with my hands. It gives me something to do with my mind creatively. And it's colorful. So I live in Wisconsin, as you do. It's gray here 6 months out of the year. When I'm doing the art, I can get out vibrant reds in January and deep blues and purples and have fun with them. It's just fun. And for me, the art process is not about creating something. It's about the process of doing it. Meaning like, I have no idea in my head when I start what the final product is going to be. I just have a blank piece of paper, my brushes, my paints, and my mind, and I just go with it. And what's so fascinating about it, or what I really enjoy about it too, is that with every single painting I do, there always comes a point where I'm like, I hate this painting. Like I'm halfway through it and I'm like, I hate it. I hate this. And I don't even want to finish it. But there's this little voice in the back of my head that says, stop judging, just stick with it. This is part of the process. Just trust it and keep going. And eventually I work with the painting long enough, massaging the lines and the design and the composition to a point where I'm like, now it's turning into something. And that might take a couple weeks, it might take months. I never know. But that's a great lesson to remind yourself of all the time too. So
full body goosebumps with that one. Yes, because that happens like all the time where for me, like I hate it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you said, massage it, stick with it, stop judging it, kind of release the idea of control over it and just trust the process.
Yeah.
So
it's hard.
Yes, if you get to this space in life, release the control, trust the process, stop judging yourself or it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Right.
Ooh, that's right there.
It's hard, right? Because
Yes.
everybody wants to be seen, but nobody wants to be judged, either by ourselves or other people. So it's hard to get past that thought. It's easier said than done. But this is what I love about the art. And I'm the only one doing it. I'm the only one who sees it. I'm the only one who knows I'm struggling. But I'm building that muscle that helps then to transfer into other parts of my life, I think. And I've never really thought about this until I'm just saying it out loud. But building that muscle of being able, like you say, to let go of the control and just keep going with it. When you get out into the world where people start judging whatever you're doing, you can just be like, look, I'm just going to trust the process. I'm not going to let all that noise, all that chatter stop me. I'm just going to keep going. And so there's a little, probably a lesson of perseverance in there somewhere, or just letting go and trusting that this is exactly how it's supposed to be. I mean, you hear all these people who are wildly successful say it's the minute I let go and just trusted everything that it all kind of magically happened. And
I'm like, I am there. Like the letting go, like the therapy and the coaching I get about letting go. I'm like, my hands are open.
Yeah, I know.
I'm trying.
I know.
It's such a process.
It really is.
Like I think in my bathroom on my board, it's all like, let go, trust the process, don't judge it. And I'm like, if I can just say it enough, but I try to feel it, like,
right?
Oh, it's a journey.
Well, then there's right. And so we know as trained coaches that that's the point at which you say to yourself, okay, I cannot let go or whatever. And you have to say, so what is this? How is this protecting me? Or how is this trying to serve me? Why is this still around? Why am I still thinking this stuff? And that's going to be that answer is different for everybody, but that's where I tend to go next. And then there's honestly part of me that's like, Charity, stop this. You're just human. Let it, like, you don't have to do this self-development work all the time. Jesus, forget it. Go drink a beer and go sit on the terrace for a couple hours. Like,
reach your threshold and then get your beer.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Read my horoscope, drink my beer, and laugh with my friends, and be done with it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I've got my crystals here. Like I've got a whole lineup of crystals here.
Yeah. Fabulous. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I've got my little. You can see my little.
Yes. Do you have a message for those listening today who may be touched by this, or have somebody in their life? Like, what message do you have for them?
Touched by Bell's palsy, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. My message is Bell's palsy is very misunderstood because not a lot of us known about it. And there's a whole lot of lack of understanding of the emotional and mental component that goes with facial paralysis. By the way, that's what they call facial paralysis, that they cannot directly tie a cause to is just generically called Bell's palsy. It's a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning they've excluded stroke, they've excluded any massive brain hemorrhaging or plaque buildup, all that kind of thing they look for. They don't know, but they know you've got facial paralysis. It is absolutely devastating when you can no longer do all these normal things that you're used to doing. And everybody just kind of says, oh, it's temporary. Don't worry about it. It's fine. There isn't a lot of compassion for it, honestly, I feel like among people. I mean, they're like, yeah, that's too bad. That must be hard. But so many Bell survivors that I talk to that deal with it long-term like me, which by the way is less than 10% of people who ever diagnosed, it's really, it's life-changing, you know? And I don't think people quite understand that. So I would just say that when people tell you they've got Bell's palsy, don't just dismiss it and say, oh yeah, I've heard of that and it gets better in like 2 weeks, right? Like, just know that it's crushing when you literally can't feed yourself, express yourself, like it literally happens overnight and you have no control. I mean, talk about letting go. So that's what I would just say is, you know, for the people that are going through it and their loved ones are going through it, it can be absolutely devastating, and don't underestimate that for people. The depression along with it, I think, is so need to be treated, not just the physical part.
With that compassion, so with knowing what you have gone through and are going through, if somebody is going through this or maybe just starting, any message for them?
Well, I tell you what, if you can, get yourself a therapist right alongside your doctor, because even if you have short-term Bells, 2, 3, 4 weeks, there might still be some residual stuff in there that you need to sort through. And there's just, you know, a whole lot of going to the doctor for months on end. It's like, I wouldn't compare it to a cancer diagnosis by any stretch, but it's that same sort of sense of like, this is now a part of my life and I need to muster all the resources I can. And I'm a big believer that if you can keep your head strong, if you can get your mental game in line, you're much better positioned to bring the physical game much more quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Okay. So therapy. Yeah. I'm a big, like, I love my therapist. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, we should be born with a pediatrician and your therapist, because there's so much, like, people are like, I don't want to do that. But if we just gave it to you at birth alongside your pediatrician, like,
yeah, it's crazy to me that we don't do that. Honestly, frankly, I really think it's nuts, because the older I get and the more experience I have in this life, my piece of wisdom is, what I've learned is that we are, as humans, physical beings, but we're also very emotional and spiritual. And to not have a place to go with those kinds of emotional and spiritual challenges and problems is asinine. We have doctors to take care of our physical stuff. What? Don't even get me started.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree.
That's for another podcast. I will join you.
But I love that. Here's your pediatrician. Here's your therapist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So wrapping this up, can you share your number one life hack or tip that has helped you save time, energy, or resources?
Napping. First thing that came to my mind.
Yes.
I am a huge believer in the power of a 1 hour nap or less. Or you don't even have to sleep, but just rest. Like, I find, especially in this Zoom world of post-pandemic where I'm on the screen all day, by like 2:30, I literally can't, like, I notice my cognitive processes slow down and get scrambly, and I'm not efficient anymore. And I will go lay down I'll set my alarm. I'll be like, I'm just going to lay here for 40 minutes. If I sleep, great. If I don't, great. Normally I do sleep. And then I'll get up and I'm refreshed for the rest of the afternoon. My daughter gets home from school, for dinner, for family's time, for wrapping up the rest of the workday. Like, all of it, that's my life hack for energy and resources.
Please take this life hack and apply it. People are so resistant to naps. I take naps. I love that. Mine are like, I put my meditation on and I fall asleep. So it like hits 2 boxes. But yes, it just leaves you so refreshed and ready. But like, people are so resistant to it. Like, just calm down, go take your nap. It will, like, you will be so much more productive afterwards.
Yes. You know, my husband and I did our honeymoon many moons ago in Spain. We were very fortunate enough to be able to do that. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced this notion of a siesta. We're like, literally, this was back before globalization. So everybody stopped after lunch for an hour, and they literally, shops closed, like nothing was open. People were resting. Then they got up and continued about their day. And I thought, that is brilliant. Like, that is so sane. Why don't we do that? And so I've been a long time fan of that siesta night idea.
Oh, good for you. I've been looking for another coaching office. And my one thing is that I want a place to have a couch so that I can take a nap.
I hear ya. I am not above laying on the floor of my office. I have done that before too, just because I'm like, I just need 20 minutes.
I love it.
Yeah, rest.
Please go nap.
Rest enough. We do not rest enough.
No, we don't.
That's how I protect my peace too, is rest. You've got to rest.
So good talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
This was so fun. The hour went so fast.
Thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Love you. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.
Spirit of a Badass is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Alecia Jacobson. Music by Shane Ivers. We'll be back with another inspiring interview. Until then, keep your spirits high and your energy badass.